Okay, this next section is Introduction to Trigonomic Ratios. And what those are, the trigonometry is the study of the relationship of the sides and the angles of right triangles. So if you have just an angle and one side of a right triangle, you can figure out what the other sides and angles are, what their measurements are, or their degrees of the angles are. And there are three ratios that we use to do that, trig ratios. And the easiest way to remember them is to remember Chief SOHCAHTOA. Chief SOHCAHTOA. This is the easiest way to remember the three trig ratios. And the sine of a particular angle is equal, of a degree of an angle, is equal to the opposite side measurement over the hypotenuse measurement. And I'm going to show you how to compute those. So that is the right here, sine opposite over hypotenuse. Then we have cosine, and we just abbreviate it like that. The cosine of a specific angle is the adjacent side measurement, the adjacent over the hypotenuse. So it's the CAH, the SOHCAH, adjacent A and H, CAH. And the TOA is the tan of a specific angle measure is equal to the opposite side over the adjacent side measurement. And that stands for the T in tan, O in opposite, and A in adjacent. So that's how you remember these, and then I'm going to show you how to use them and compute your angles and your measurements of your sides. So first of all, let's look at a triangle. And remember, they have to be right triangles only. And if this triangle measures 4 and 3, to figure out the measurement of that angle right there with these two pieces of information, you could do sine of angle, let's call this angle G. You could do sine of angle G, and sine is opposite. Opposite is the side opposite to the angle. So here's angle G, and we're looking for that. And its degree measure is the opposite side measurement of 3 divided by the hypotenuse, which this isn't the hypotenuse, but we know that this is a 3, 4, 5 triangle, don't we? That's a standard right triangle, so the hypotenuse is 5. That's this one. So that is how you would compute it here. You could also compute it by using the cosine of G, degrees. If you use you're trying to find this angle measure of G, and you want to use the cosine, then you're going to look up here and you're going to see you need the adjacent measurement. Adjacent is the one right next to it, not the hypotenuse, okay? The adjacent is next to the line next to the G degrees. That is, it can't be the hypotenuse, but it's the other one, so it's 4. And the hypotenuse, which is 5, the hypotenuse remains in the same area always, opposite the right angle. What changes is depending on where you're at with your angle. If you're looking for an angle up here and they want the opposite side to compute your ratios, then it's going to be this one, right? It's going to be the opposite of that angle. So that's what you have to be careful of right here. Be really careful of that, because the opposites and the adjacents change. The hypotenuse is always the same, okay? So then if you want to use tan of G degrees, so we want to use tan here, we're going to use the opposite, which is 3. The opposite to G is 3. And the adjacent is 4. Not 5, because that's a hypotenuse. So if you, these are, and then you can use the calculator to compute these from this information. We'll do that next, but let's see. That's so you can understand what we're using, what parts of the triangle we're using, and how we set up the ratios. Okay, so let's go to the next thing. Let's look at actually calculating the trig ratios. So if I tell you to find the cosine of 72 degrees, remember, it's going to be a ratio. It's going to calculate out as a decimal form. So if everybody just uses a phone, I think different calculators, that's why I like to do this in class, you punch the numbers in differently. If we all use our phones, maybe it won't be different. So if you have trouble with it, you can call me and we'll try to get it worked out together. But if you go ahead and put your calculator up and clear it, put your calculator up, just go ahead and use a phone if you can, because this will be easiest. And typically what we do, if we want the cosine of 72, if you're already in this screen, I am on not the degree, but the rad here. And if you put in 72 and then hit the cosine, just the cosine, C-O-S sign, you will get 0.309, and we're going to round that to 0.31. And that's the answer they're looking for. That's what they want. Okay, so if you want to do the sine of 30 degrees, to use your calculator, clear it, punch in 30 and hit sine, and you should get 0.5. And then clear that, and we'll do tan of 70, and you should be able to punch in 70 and the tan button, and you get rounded to 0.75 rounded. Now, if your calculator doesn't work, you might try hitting cosine and then 72, and then see if you get these numbers. So you've got to figure out which way to use your calculator. On the phone here, I punch 72 in, then my trig cosine. If you need to do it the other way, try it to make sure you can get at the right answers here. Okay, then the next thing we're going to do is we are going to actually take a triangle, and it is a right triangle. A right triangle. This degree is 72 degrees right here on this angle. This is 13. Okay, so this is our hypotenuse. Let's identify our sides. This is the hypotenuse, okay? We always want to remember that's the hypotenuse, this side right here. So they are saying use a tangent ratio to find the length of E right there. Okay? So we're going to use the tangent ratio to find this measurement here. So the tan of, okay, so you're not going to say tan of E, the tan is the degree here. So you have to put in your angle degree that you know, that you have. So the tan is always set up here where this is the angle. So we have an angle of 72. Now what do we know? We don't know what the hypotenuse is, but we know we have this. And what is this? Is this an opposite? No, opposite would be E. Is this, but we're looking for opposite, and this is an adjacent. So we look up here, where do we have opposite and adjacent? Remember, we have to have two things. We have to know two things to get the other item. We have to know at least two. So this is the opposite, and 13 is the adjacent to angle 72. So it looks like, yeah, we're going to use tan 72. The opposite is going to be on top, and the adjacent is 13. It goes in order. So it's tan degree 72 equals opposite of E over adjacent of 13. Okay, now to solve this, you do it just like you do algebra, okay? So you've got this fraction over here. You know, if you multiply this by 13, these cross out, then you have your unknown all by itself, but you got to do it over here too. So you have to multiply this by 13. So now we have E equals to 13 times the tan of 72. Now, the key is, let's get our calculators out. And on my calculator, and you'll probably have to play around with yours, but I'm going to put in 72 first, and then the tan, and then I'm going to times it times the 13, and then hit equals. And I get 40.01 for E. So that means this side is equal to 40.01. And you want to always go 2 decimal places out. So let me do that again for you. I put in 7, I had to put in on mine. Now you may have to do tan of 72, punch that in, and then times 13. I don't know what you have to do. Whatever you do, remember what you do and use the same calculator. Okay, for the phone here, I am putting in 72 times, no, clear, 72 tan, I'm sorry, 72 tan, and then times 13, and that equals 72 tan times 13 equals 40.01 rounded. So that's the answer of E. Okay, let's do another one. This one we're going to do let's do another triangle, And it's a right triangle. We have 8 over here. We have 32 degrees, and we have x, which this is the hypotenuse, by the way. This is the hypotenuse, this one right here. It's always labeled as such, okay? It doesn't move around on you anywhere. Okay, so we want to solve for x, and we have to look for, we have an angle measure. So we got an angle measure, and we've got one length of one side, so that's all we need. So we're going to use one of these. So what do we have? From this angle measure, we have an opposite, don't we? And a hypotenuse, right? The hypotenuse is the one we want, and we have an opposite. That's opposite from this 32 degrees. So go up here and see where you have opposite and hypotenuse, and that's this one right here. That's sine. So we're going to use sine, and you use the 32 degrees. Remember, that's where the angle measure goes. You're going to say that is equal to the opposite of 8 over x. Okay, now we have to get this in the right order again. Okay, that is this, we have to get this x by itself. When you have these, you just switch these. Okay, so just remember that. When you see them like this, where your unknown is down here on the bottom, down here like this, you can flip these two. So you're going to have x is equal to 8 over sine 32 degrees. Okay, so you just have to flip these. This is like all over 1. Okay, so we're looking at it like this. So you can just flip these, and you'll have x equals 8, and this is on the bottom over here. Flip this one over here, this one here. Okay, so you just have to memorize this for now. I mean, it's an algebra. I mean, we can go all the way through and do it algebraically, but if you just want to remember that you can flip that, you'll be fine. Okay, so now, how do we punch this in our calculator? This is going to give us the length of x here. So let's get our calculators back out. And we're going to do, now and here again, this may be different for some of you, but on my calculator I'm going to do 8 divided by 32, and then hit sign, and then equals. And that equals, x equals 15.10. So that is the measurement of that. This one's 8, this is 15.10. So I'll do that again for you. We're going to do with my calculator. Now you may have to do sine of 32. You might actually have to do that. Figure out what that is. Put that number down. Then go back and go 8 divided by that to get this answer. But just play with it and see how that you can get it. And the way I have to do it is 8 divided by, I hit 32, then I hit sign, and then I hit equals. And that's how I get the right answer. Okay. Then that is the end of this lesson. I am going to do problem G for you on the lesson practice. But what I want you to do is stop the tape right now and do your homework. And then if you can't do G, put the tape back on and I will continue and do G for you. Okay, I'm going to do lesson Chief SOHCAHTOA. I'm going to do G on the practice problems, page 453. And what we have a picture of here is a right triangle. Well, it's actually a swing set or something, a slide or something. The degree we have is a 38 degrees. This is 16 feet. And they want to know how high it is. Okay, so this is the right. This is the hypotenuse. Okay, so we've identified our parts here. So we want to set this up to figure out how high this swing set is, or this slide is. So if this, what are we looking for? Well, what is this side? To this angle, when I stand here at this angle, this is the opposite side. And this is the known we have, which is the hypotenuse. So we're looking for opposite and hypotenuse, aren't we? So we're going to use, which one are we going to use? We're going to use sine. We're going to use the sine of 38 degrees is equal to, sine of 38, is equal to the opposite, which we don't know, in over the hypotenuse, which is 16. Okay, this is another one of those right here. So what we're going to do here, now, well, the unknown's not on the bottom, but here what we do is we're going to multiply both sides by 16. Okay, we did one of these in our lesson. And that's going to give us what n is equal to. So when we go to punch this in on the calculator, sorry, just a minute. Okay, here is, I'm going to clear it. So I'm going to solve for n. This height of n we need, we're going to do 38. Press the sine button, and then we're going to go times 16 equals. And so that n value is 9.85 feet. So I did, this is what I did on my calculator. 38 sine, you don't do times here. You do 38 and punch the sine button. Then you do times 16 equals. So that's what you punch in your calculator, and you should get 9.85. And that is the end of lesson 68.